Now, I'm hoping that you are all in the place that you'd like to be, and that is the Drake Music webinar using Arts Award to accredit music for disabled young people. Now, I'm Martin Cousins. I'll be hosting this, and we're going to roll a bit like a radio program rather than straight up delivery of just loads of slides. It's my pleasure to introduce you to our speakers this afternoon. And before I do, I would quickly like to say, please, this is about conversation as much as we can. So we would all like this to be as useful for you as possible. So please do pose your questions. Our speakers are primed, they can see the chat. So we've got what we're going to do is we're going to hear from Ruth. We're going to have some questions. We're going to hear from Jonathan and round up with some questions. Everything will be recorded and we will send this out after the event. But please do, as you go, ask away and we will cover as much as we can. So without further ado, I'd like to quickly introduce our speakers. So we've got Ruth Jones. Ruth, tell us what you do, please.
Hi everybody, yeah, I work for Trinity College London and I'm the Music Education Hub's Associate, and my main role is working to support music hubs and services who would like to use Arts Award and music settings. And I'm delighted to be here because for 5 years I also oversaw the Arts Award Reaching Out programme, which looked at Arts Award and access and inclusion.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ruth. And Jonathan, let's hear from you. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm the music education manager for a charity called Drake Music. And I guess my particular interest in this area of work is that about 10 years ago, I wrote an accessible music course called Compose and Perform, which Drake Music still runs, I'm very pleased to say. And a lot of my work is also with music education hubs as well.
Great. So I'm now going to hand over to you, Ruth, and you should be able to...
Okay, this is where I'm going to take over control. Yeah. Are you ready?
We're ready. It should be working for you.
It isn't working. Hi, everyone. Don't you just love technology? Martin, could we have the next slide, please?
Wait a minute. Try that one more time.
Okay.
If it doesn't... No, is it not doing that? Right, I'm going to blame this.
Oh, yep.
Ah.
I've got it. Right. So I would like to start off by telling you a bit of my own story with Arts Award, because I am a huge fan. It's not just a job for me. I was involved way back before the launch of Arts Award, involved in a pilot stage testing Arts Award in different settings. And then in 2005 at the launch, I was really pleased to come on board and do the first ever moderation for Arts Award down in Cornwall. So now, as you can see, Arts Award is a very confident and creative 13-year-old. And I really like it that there are young people who were born in 2005 who might very well be at this very minute doing their Bronze Arts Award. So I'm just trying to click to the next slide again. Okay, here we go. So first of all, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what Arts Award actually is in terms of its status as a qualification before we go on to having a look at what young people actually do. So Trinity College London is the awarding body for Arts Award, and the qualifications actually sit on the RQF. More about that on the next slide. Trinity College London leads on the delivery and development of Arts Award, supported by Arts Council England. And it's because of its personalised portfolio-based journey and the assessment criteria, it's really suitable as an accessible accreditation pathway for children and young people with a really wide range of interests and abilities. So, before we go on any further, here is the famous RQF, the Regulated Qualification Frameworks, and there are the 5 levels of Arts Awards, starting at Discover and then going on to Explore, Bronze, Silver and Gold. So the Regulated Qualification Framework is the framework that the levels sit on. So we're talking about this entry level 3, Bronze is a level 1, Silver is a level 2, Gold is a level 3. Just to give you an idea of the kind of standard that that's working at, Bronze level 1 is equivalent to about the standard of a music grade 1 to 3 or GCSE grade D to G. A level 2 is music grade 4 to 5, GCSE grade A star to C, and level 3 is the Gold, which is music grade 6 to 8, which is working at A-level standard. It's not equivalent to an A-level, it's just working at that standard. But if you look at Gold, which has got 16 UCAS points, it is equivalent in points to grade 7 music distinction. So hopefully that gives you a picture of where each Arts Award sits on the Regulated Qualification Framework. Regulated by Ofqual in England, CCEA regulation in Northern Ireland, and Qualifications Wales. In terms of age group, it's open to all children and young people up to the age of 25, but there is one rule, and that is you can't go Bronze or, somebody's clicked it back.
Sorry, I think that may have been me.
So you can't go above Bronze Arts Award until, you can't be moderated for your Bronze Arts Award until you reach the age of 11. There's no rule other than that. So we have 25-year-olds doing Discover and Explore. We have gifted 14-year-olds doing Silver and even Gold level. It's about setting the right level for the young people that you're working with. So now, if we go on the next slide. Sorry. There's nothing more entertaining than watching somebody else battle with a PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. This is one of the things that I really, really love about Arts Award. It's because you can do your Arts Award in any art form, in any genre, in any style. You can, as well as being a performer, you can be behind the scenes. So you could be a music promoter, or a sound technician, just as much as you could be a violinist. Arts Award is therefore really good for unusual instruments that might not have their own graded exams pathway. You can see up there's a didgeridoo, and I was really pleased. I once visited at a school near Brighton, and the music teacher that I was talking to had no idea that a boy in his class was an expert didgeridoo player until it came to Arts Award, and he said, "Sir, can I do my Arts Award using my didgeridoo?" So he did a didgeridoo themed Arts Award, which was great. It's also really good for accessible instruments, and really great for creative digital activity and online activity. So here we go. Look at that, that's exciting. What young people actually do. From that Discover level right up to Gold, there are elements of plan, do and review, as well as a little bit of exploration. So at Discover, there's a kind of anticipation of taking part and getting involved and then sharing what they've been doing, finding out about practitioners. And by the time you get to Gold, you're planning your own skills development, you're leading a project and reviewing it. Excuse me, I have a terrible cold. You're also exploring the world of the arts and finding out about careers and working in the arts, finding out about further education and training pathways. So what I wanted to do was just give you a little bit of an idea of what would happen if a young person was doing Bronze Arts Award. There's 4 parts to a Bronze Arts Award, A, B, C and D. And so part A is taking part. So they would be taking part in literally any creative or musical activity that you have planned. And then they are reflecting on and identifying some skills that they might have learned. It could be a musical workshop, or it could be that they're using a longer engagement with music or an arts activity to do their taking part. For part B, they have to be the audience. They have to see something or hear something, or be conscious that they're taking in art or musical activity that somebody else is creating. And then they're sharing their own opinion on what they've been the audience for. And for part C, they're researching the work of a human being who makes art, so a craftsperson, a practitioner, a musician. They could be a famous musician, it could be your own music teacher, it could be your mum, because your mum was a pianist and inspired you at an early age. So you research that person's music and artwork and find out things about them. For part D, the final bit, you pass on an art skill to somebody else. So that could be live in the room. You could teach somebody how to use some music software. You might be able to teach a friend to tune a guitar or tune an instrument. You might be creating a how-to PowerPoint, or you might be even leading a little mini lesson. So that's a kind of summary. It's great. Lorenza, Arts Award is amazing. I can see your comment. Yeah, that's a little summary of how you would use Arts Award at bronze level. So this is another favourite thing about Arts Award. As you can see, I love Arts Award as well. The portfolios, the evidencing of all of this taking part and being the audience and passing on a skill can be in any format. The word format is actually missing from the slide there. It's got scrambled away somewhere. So you can use a traditional book to write up your Arts Award and photos. Just put the slide back there. You can use visual or audio recordings. We've got lots of downloadable resources with ideas for creative and accessible evidencing formats. And my personal top tip for Arts Award is, if the evidencing part, the creating the portfolios, is a really enjoyable creative activity as much as the taking part, then much more likely to be successful. It feels a little bit less like schoolwork then. So the next element of Arts Award to talk about is the assessment criteria, and this is, young people are not measured against specific music or arts skills levels. The assessment criteria are artful knowledge and understanding, creativity, communication, and then later at silver and gold, planning and review. So the detail required for each of these criteria increases as you progress from Discover up to Gold, and then that planning and review element is added at Silver and Gold. In order to deliver Arts Award, you have to be an advisor, an Arts Award advisor. So that's our technical term for somebody who is mentoring and leading somebody through Arts Award and then carrying out the assessment. When you're an advisor, you can register your organisation to become a centre. And at the qualification levels, Explore, Bronze, Silver and Gold, your assessment is moderated. So to get started, you attend advisor training, either a half day or a full day for Discover and Explore or Bronze and Silver, and then you can top up to Gold if you've already done the Bronze and Silver level. And we have special educational needs advisor training for Discover and Explore and Bronze and Silver, and you can find out more about those dates online. All of our training dates are on our website, so you can look at dates and venues that are near you. So the kind of summary, that's why I think Arts Award is an inclusive qualifications pathway. Excuse me, and that children and young people whose starting point can be at any level can enjoy a challenging Arts Award journey. And I was really delighted to meet up with Rachel Wolfson from the One Handed Musical Instrument Trust. Hello, Rachel, if you're there. Who was talking to me about having young people having a great time doing Arts Award Discover with their adapted instruments. Many of you, especially within the Drake music community, will be familiar with musician Charlotte White, who uses music technology, and she did her Bronze Arts Award several years ago. She performs in the British Parrot Orchestra, and she's now a trained Arts Award advisor and supporting disabled young people to do their Arts Award at Bristol Plays Music. So there's lots more information on the website. That was a kind of whirlwind journey through elements of Arts Award, and would be very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ruth. That was really, now look, I'm just grappling with the fact that there's, whenever I do text chat, I put the slide goes forward, which is rather annoying. So sorry everyone about that. Now, look, you've done a fantastic job there, Ruth. I know you're battling a really heavy cold. So
yeah, I'm coughing into a hanky.
So are there any questions? If you've got a question for Ruth, you could ask that now in chat. Are you all using, don't raise your hands though. That's the other thing. Siobhan, thank you for raising it. If you could put it into chat, that would be really good. We're just going to focus on using the chat. So if you could put it there. Charles, thanks for your question. How long does the process generally take for a young person to go through the bronze certificate, Ruth?
Okay, so doing Arts Award Bronze, it can be as long as a piece of string, and it depends very much on what your opportunities are for working with young people. So, for example, if you had a group of young people all week, 1 week, you could do Bronze in a week if they were doing not a lot of other activities. So you would break the sessions up, those part A, B, C and D, into 4 sections, and spend some time doing your creative and fun evidencing of taking part. So we have got a resource that is called 5-day Bronze, but it might be that it's embedded within a longer programme. So some schools, for example, might embed Bronze within a group of students who are all working together towards a music concert. So they were using aspects of their music activity for their Bronze Arts Award. Might not be very helpful, but lots of schools might deliver Bronze in a term if they had a once a week 2-hour session. I hope that's helpful.
That's great. And Charles, if you need to follow up, then please do add that in the text chat. So Siobhan, question.
Okay, the regulated qualification framework. I do not know the answer to that question, and I can get the answer to that question to you after the end of this webinar. Okay,
so that'd be quite good. So I was going to say also, Ruth has provided us with lots of links that she mentions in her slides, and we will send that to everyone. And also we will send that answer to you, Siobhan. So we want to make sure you get what you need from today and from our speakers. So Clara has a question there. Ruth,
okay, I'm just scrolling down. Okay, Clara, you haven't had the opportunity to work on a project. Okay, you can. They're on the Arts Award website. There's a Find a Centre feature, so you can, excuse me, you can find centres near you if you're wanting to hook up. We can't take responsibility for brokering individual relationships, but you should be able to easily see from the Find a Centre, put it in an onboard search bar on the Arts Award website, and you should be able to identify organisations that you can work with that are already registered Arts Award centres.
Okay, so that's great, Ruth, and we'll send that out, I think, as that's obviously going to be useful.
Okay.
So Debbie's asking, how well is the qualification recommended by employers? And
okay, it's recognised by many employers and higher and further education. So it's got very high visibility now. We're quite established now, being 13 years old, and I think one of the things about an Arts Award is young people have a story to tell when they've done an Arts Award. So it can often be used for job interviews. And I know of one young person who didn't have any other qualifications, used Arts Award to get into the army. I worked supporting a homeless support organisation, a housing support organisation, and they had young people there who used their Arts Award to get into catering. Because it demonstrated their leadership and their teamwork and their communication skills, as well as being on a subject that they really enjoyed, which in their case was rock music.
Brilliant. Now, Lorena, she just makes the point that we don't want it to make it sound like it's just for schools.
No, in fact, mentioned home education. So we have lots of people working on, a whole community of people using Arts Award with home educated young people. Anybody can deliver the Arts Award if they meet the person specification, which you judge yourself to meet the person specification when you book. You don't have to be an artist. So we have parents delivering Arts Awards to their children and their friends' children. You need to be experienced in working with children and young people and have an understanding of how young people can get involved in the arts. So sometimes you're brokering Arts Award relationships with, you're matching an artist to a young person's needs. So there's a lot of youth workers that deliver Arts Award in youth work settings, youth offending settings. I've also run programmes delivering Arts Award in hospitals and hospital schools and through mental health programmes.
And Clara's just asking, how old has the oldest person been? Who's the oldest person? What age to do Arts Award?
Oh, so it's open to all young people up to the age of 25, but we must have had a 25-year-old doing it in 2005. That makes them now 38. I don't know if that's. So yeah, you can do the Arts Award up to age 25. So Bridges, Clara, yeah, Bridges help with that kind of thing. Yeah, definitely there are local area networks that you can get involved in.
And how about the cost of entering a candidate for the different levels? Asked Jill.
Okay, so there's two costs that you need to consider when you're budgeting for Arts Award. So one is the cost for your initial training. And so if you were training for the half-day training to deliver, discover and explore, it's £147. So that's a one-off cost to get you trained as an advisor. If you are training for bronze and silver, that's £197. You are then trained to deliver both bronze and silver level. If you're entering young people for the moderation, you've done the assessment and then your assessment is being moderated. For Explore, it's £12.75 per young person. For bronze, it's £23. And for silver, it's £28. For gold, it's £40. And if you're delivering Discover, that's not a moderated level, it's a certificate, and the certificate costs £3.75 per young person. But there's a lot more information on the website where if you're working with larger numbers, you can get discounts. And you can also certainly get discount on training if you've got a group of 6 people together who want to be trained. You can save about 38% on the cost of training per person.
Great. Now, Clara was also saying, I know our focus is younger people, making the point that we don't all stop at 25. So,
I know.
And I'm presuming I'm not a subject expert here, so I'm presuming there are other options post 25.
There are lots of, certainly there are lots of links to other Trinity qualifications, and Trinity has access and inclusion policy. So there's the suite of rock and pop music, there's drama, music, dance. So there are lots of routes post-25 within our portfolio of products, if you like.
Yeah.
I think with Arts Award, it was designed and set up to be a young person's award. We do get a lot of people saying they wish you could do it older, but maybe if you're older, you could train as an Arts Award advisor and be really creative, delivering some programs for younger people.
Yeah, great point. Now, thank you everyone for great questions. Keep them coming. Ruth is still here. But I thought, as time is marching on, I think it's a good discussion. I think we need to bring in our man from Bristol. Are you still there, Jonathan?
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes, can hear you loud and clear. So you're going to carry on where Ruth has left off. So I'll let you describe what you're going to talk us through.
Yeah. Well, thank you first, Ruth, for battling through there. And I mean, just to sort of say, this entire webinar today has happened because of a piece of work Drake Musica just coming to the end of this particular 3-year period we've been doing it, but called Think 2020, which is about opening up opportunities and strategic change in the music education sector around inclusion and specifically around the interests and needs of disabled musicians. So this is a Think 2020 webinar. You know, we want to work in partnership with people like Arts Award and Trinity College to really shine a light on the amazing opportunities that are out there now for musicians of all abilities. So that's what this slide is just showing, the 3 main areas that we've been working on through Think 2020. So I guess this would come under lots of, probably two of those titles, maybe 1, 2 and 3 actually, thinking about it. So anyway, next slide. Is it okay, Martin? Are you doing this still?
You can say that to me. I'm here.
Yeah. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time talking about my experiences, I guess, in assessment and accreditation in music, because that's taken up really a big chunk of my professional life for the last 10 years. It was a nice segue to finish with Charlotte there, Ruth, because I was very privileged to be Charlotte's Arts Award advisor going back 10 years. And, you know, there's a story therein. Charlotte was, you know, it still is a brilliant musician and was using technology to play music. And, you know, we sat in a lot of rooms of awarding bodies saying, you know, what could you possibly do for Charlotte in terms of accrediting her performance of a piece, an abridged version of a piece by Bach. And to cut a long story short, there wasn't really anything there that they could offer apart from Arts Awards. So I think things have moved on in the last 10 years. I think things are changing in different areas of accreditation in music, but we're not there yet. But Arts Award has been a real beacon for helping musicians like Charlotte to progress. So maybe we've just got a nice few slides here of young people that we've worked with. I think one thing to say is that traditionally, I think the traditional forms of music playing or around assessment and accreditation have had this model that says, you know, the child must adapt to the format, you know, and I think what Arts Award has done, what our own Compose and Perform course has started to do is to chip away at that model and to say, well, actually the format should be there to adapt itself to what the child's interests and abilities are. It should be the other way around. And that's quite a significant change in thinking, because I think what follows from there is that the way that courses are written, the criteria, I think the quality assurance decisions and the moderation, all of these aspects start to become much more flexible in terms of looking at how that child can get to the point of achieving in their own way. And I don't think it's a question about compromising quality. That used to be something that was kind of thrown back at me going back 10 years. People say, well, we can't really open this up because we'll be compromised. But I think a lot that's happened in the last few years is really demonstrating that quality is not the question here. It's just about opportunity, really. Okay. Should we go to the next slide? Are you still hearing me okay?
Yep.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So I want to pick up a little bit on what Ruth started to talk about, journey, personal journeys. I think that's another integral aspect of what good assessment and accreditation should be. And I think the phrase I'd use would be around something that we would call musical identity. And I think if we just go through the slides again, there's some nice slides here just sort of showing that, young people, children, everyone's got something to say. And the way that, you want that to happen is that, assessment and accreditation should be around matching that musical identity. Just go through again to the next slide. There's a very, very rich, diverse world out there in music. I think it's a crying shame that we seem to be historically cutting off those opportunities to a lot of people. And I think that is changing. I'm very pleased to say that I think that is changing. Let's move through. And maybe just talk a little bit about historically why we weren't making as much progress. I've been working in this sector, if you like, for about 12, 13 years. And I think we've always been aware in the past that perhaps there were lower expectations around what could be achieved by disabled musicians. Again, no basis or evidence other than, I guess, a kind of just cultural lower expectation. And perhaps also an assumption around the fact that if you're dealing with, say, the question of disabled young people engaging, participating in music, that would inevitably be a therapeutic transaction, which is not the case at all. Again, it's an assumption. There are lots of musicians out there, for instance, somebody like in Charlotte's situation, who's just a very gifted, intelligent musician who wanted to get on and play music. And I think the final thing, and again, Arts Award being 13 years old, it's sticking around. It hasn't come and gone in a flash. I think in the past, projects tended to be perhaps shorter term in their outlook, whereas now what's happening is people are saying, inclusion's here. It's a big topic in music education. It can't go away again. I mean, that's really important. It can't go away again. And one aspect of that is talking about progression and people's opportunity to get better at playing music and composing music. Let's go to the next slide. How are we doing for time, Martin?
We're doing fine.
Keep going. All right. So we're just going to see a few more photos here. Here's a young man called Ian, very talented young man. Keep going through. And again, just the questions are quite simple at the beginning. I think when you're thinking about working with young people of all abilities, what do you want to do in music, and how do you like to say it? How do you want to go about doing it? And again, I think Arts Award has got that flexibility written into it that really means that you can adapt it to what the young person wants to do. Let's move on. So this is a nice project. This is a project based in Bristol called Absorbed by Sound, which meets on a Saturday. So again, someone's point earlier about schools. Actually, a lot of, as we know, a lot of very interesting music making happens outside of school. And that's an interesting tension, really, isn't it, between the music that children do outside of school and what is taught in schools. So, we know a lot of interesting music happens outside the school gates. Next slide. Okay. And That's fine. Let's keep moving. Yeah, okay. So I think another aspect of this discussion is that a lot of music hubs have made ground on inclusion in music since the national plan was published about 5 years ago. And I think there was a sense in which people were looking around thinking, how do we change things? And I think inevitably people say, well, we need to find experts to do this. And I think there is an element of finding people with experience to help guide people through. But I do feel as well that there's a much bigger collective responsibility in the sector. I think everybody has a part to play in opening up opportunities in music. And I think if you go to music conferences now, the big music conferences, you will hear conversations everywhere that speak of a collective understanding that access to music is a right for every child now. I think people understand that is just going to become part and parcel of what music education means in the United Kingdom from now on. Go to the next slide. And yeah, we're just going to finish off by sort of maybe saying, well, why is assessment and evaluation important in music? Lots of things in music are important, but why is this important? And it's a nice slide here. It's a young man called Bradley that I worked with for many years doing our own Compose and Perform course. And Bradley is now playing in the Southwest Open Youth Orchestra using eye gaze technology. We always knew that he was destined for great things because he's a very determined musician. And I think it's important to have these opportunities. I think firstly, choice is the big one. I think having choices it is a rights issue as well. The choice to do it, the choice not to do it. I think that's important. I think progression is important. We've seen a few musicians who we were working with 10 years ago who are still now engaging like Bradley. And I hope, I wouldn't assume or be sort of arrogant enough to sort of make an assumption, but I hope that the sort of things we were doing together over the years may have helped him in that journey somewhat, in some way. I think enjoyment, people getting together. I think Ruth was touching upon that people getting together to engage and to play music or to do arts together. That's a good thing. It's good for everybody. It's good for the soul. It's good for your general well-being. And of course, just the sense that you've achieved something, that is really important. I think the next slide, there's a nice picture of Bradley getting his certificate for Compose and Perform, if we go through. Yeah, there we go. So, they're important markers along the way when, you've worked hard, you've achieved something. Should we go to the next slide? And there's a nice picture of Charlotte. Maybe next slide. Another young man we worked with in Bristol, who again was important in that discussion 10 years ago around assessment and accreditation. I mentored Jordan through GCSE. Very interesting discussion there about GCSE and how flexible that can be or not for disabled young people. That's another discussion, I think. Next one. And yeah, just talking about the workforce. There was a report a couple of years ago called the Promise Report, which was really a repeat report of one from 20 years before that by Adam Ockleford and the team who did Sounds of Intent. And I think the main point that came from that report was just how much progress there had been in the 20 years. And, there's a greater awareness of what music can do for young people in special education settings. And the workforce, put simply, is getting better at opening those opportunities up. Next slide. Okay, and I think these last few slides are just workforce slides. Yeah, just the final thing, just to say, I think when you run a course like Arts Award, of course the focus is on children and their achievement, their enjoyment, but actually the courses are there also to train teachers. And I think that's a really important point. I think the process of running an accredited course raises your game. It opens you up to opportunities. So these things are really important training grounds for music leaders, for teachers, for parents. They give you structure, they give you benchmarks, they give you resources. And so I think that's a really important point going forwards. You know, it's not just a right for young people to have opportunities to be assessed. It's actually about the workforce and the quality of the delivery. So thanks a lot. That's just a few thoughts, and yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. That's fantastic, and quite a whirlwind tour of you know, the work you've been doing over quite some time now. Now, if you had a look, Jonathan, I have a quick look in the chat. You can see that there's, you know, there have been some interesting points made, especially around this idea of music as being, in inverted columns, therapeutic.
Yeah,
that's quite interesting. What's your? Just ask what you're thinking about that.
I'm just looking through the questions now.
That was from Clara.
Yes, yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, we have. Clearly, you know, music therapy is a fantastic thing. It's always the first thing I would say. I just think there's a danger in which it can change the conversation sometimes around people who, you know, for them music is just, you know, it's just around the playing of music, the composing of music, the learning of music, whatever it is. It's just this assumption that it's always going to be a therapeutic thing. I mean, I'll give you an example, and this is not against anyone, it's just an example of this, is that, you know, I've been in situations where I've done performances with young people, disabled people, and teachers will come up maybe and sort of say, oh, you know, talk about the very emotional aspects of it, or how wonderful it must have been for you as a teacher, and actually the question you really want to ask is, was it any good? You know, that's the question. You know, music's therapeutic in a wider sense, hopefully for everyone who takes part in it. But, you know, you see, music therapy, people often say to me, are you music therapists? And I simply say, no, I haven't done the 3-year course and I don't have clients. You know, it's a very different thing. And it's just making it clear that, you know, both interventions are very equally important, but you know, different things for different people, definitely.
I think that I think it depends on what, because therapy is a broad-ranging area, and it depends on what the therapeutic outcomes are intended to be and what the therapeutic practice is. And we did some work with Sussex Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services, and we looked at, instead of using the creative activity for therapeutic outcomes, it was a creative activity that young people could do whilst they were undergoing their therapeutic course, and it made them, the results, which we've published on our website, are that young people, again, like the young people at Chelsea Community Hospital, felt like artists, and it was a bridge to the outside world or the real world, and it was something that they could talk about that they'd been doing, which was not about the therapeutic or the medical aspects of what they were going through. So it's a kind of, that's the different end of it, I suppose. If you search on our website for guidelines for Arts Award in therapeutic settings, it's a download. I can't post the link to it, but you will keep clicking and you'll get there.
And it's a conversation that I would hope would never divide people, because I think it's, you know, we are all professionals working in a similar you know, area of work in many senses. There's a lot more that brings people together and that people would understand if they sat down in a room and talked together. So I hope, you know, in that sense, it wouldn't divide people. It's just important to be clear. I think sometimes that's all I'm, I guess, raising.
There's a good, interesting question from Jill here.
Yeah.
I'll just read this out to you both. A lot of the means to make music accessible appear to require very sophisticated technology. So how do educators access this and find the skills to use it? Is that the case? And what can you do if you need to use that kind of technology?
Well, who's that for, Ruth or for?
For both of you. Start with you, Jonathan.
I think some people need technology to give them access to music, for sure. I think if you go to, for instance, a lot of special schools, that technology is already present in the environment because people are using voice output communication aids, they're using eye gaze, they're using lots of technology already as part of the daily routine and curriculum, if you like, or just general sort of life needs of individual people. So a lot of the things that we use are already kind of out there, if you like, and then they're not new in that sense. There are clearly some instruments like Skoogs or like Clarion with Open Up Music that have been designed specifically for expressive music making. So I think in terms of accessing and finding the skills to use it, I think the best thing is to get in touch with other people who already use them. I know it sounds blindingly obvious. I think find out where there are people who are using equipment like that and see if you can spend some time with them. People are quite generous, you know, they'll give time just to give you a quick introduction to how to use something. Because the other thing I'd say is that you take any piece of equipment, there's, you know, and there's like a huge amount you can do with anything, but maybe perhaps initially you only need to focus on 10% of it to get going and to engage with someone. You don't need to know the other 90% yet. So it's not like you need a degree in using a piece of equipment first before you can start using it. I think things tend to develop over time, but initially, you know, I'm sure a lot of people can pick things up to get started with equipment.
And Ruth, did you have any thoughts on that?
I think Jonathan's the expert on instruments. I was just looking at another question that come up on the chat from Francesca, top tips and methods, tools advisors use for Arts Award evidencing and logging the Arts Award journeys of disabled young people. And so I would say to that question, how do your young people normally make decisions and communicate their preferences and start from there? So it might be that a young person has a personal assistant, and so it would be the personal assistant who is helping the young person to evidence their work. It might be that they use communication methods that they would that they have communication methods that they're used to and start there. So it's going to be very different for young people who have a physical disability or a young person with autism. And young people with autism might find it difficult to reflect on and identify skills that they've been learning, and I've seen diamond ranking used very well in those instances where photographs of the activities that young people have been involved in are arranged in a diamond shape, with the young person identifying their favourite image at the top of the diamond and their least favourite at the bottom. And the use of emoticons and signs and symbols, so taking photographs and looking at images of the activity might also be somewhere to start. I hope that's helpful.
And Clara's just asking, would video be?
Oh yes, video, Facebook, Instagram. So yeah, I've seen young people curate art exhibitions online through Facebook, and use Instagram and various other social networking sites to evidence their Arts Award. So if they like the social networks, they can use those for their portfolio work.
Excellent. Jonathan, would you have anything else to add?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry,
That was around evidence.
Any tips for evidencing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my own personal experience doing compose and perform, I mean, video evidence is king, really. When I'm sat verifying evidence that people have assessed, you know, I want to meet the child or the young person, and video is the best way of doing that, especially when people have shown the progress of somebody through a skill. Because quite often people they might send you the kind of the end result, which is good, but what I love is to see where they started, and if there's a sense that I can follow them through that journey that Ruth was mentioning, then you really get to meet the child. Because, you know, you don't actually get the chance to go and sit in the room with them, but if you can tell a story, you know, tell us the story of this child's progress and their route and what, you know, made them click, you know, that's invaluable. Personally, I find.
And I think there's some other great tips here. Twitter, Instagram stories. Clara says Storify, although as a Storify user, I would add that is being shut down in the not too distant future. So going to have to look at some other options, because I thought Storify was a great tool.
I've seen great examples of young people using kind of comic strips featuring themselves with their speech bubbles and their thought bubbles. So it might be that kind of creative evidencing is popular with young people, and also sometimes using avatars and animations.
Great. Now, it's just a point, just to pick up. Charles has just shared this point. He says, I think there are a lot of barriers around more specialist technology such as eye gaze. It strikes me that the Arts Award would help broaden the scope of recognised music making in a way that would enable collaboration with likes of speech and language therapists or non-music specialists. So Ruth, what do you think of that?
I just had to dash over to the other side of the room and stop my landline from ringing.
In that case, you didn't hear that.
No.
I thought that there are two questions quickly, Charles, because I know we're running out of time here. So thanks everyone for participating so much. Charles is just saying that he thinks there are still barriers around specialist technology, but you know, could the Arts Award help broaden the scope of recognised music making in a way that would help collaboration with the likes of speech and language therapists or non-music specialists? So, you know, those young people can play to their strengths.
I think that's great. Yes, it could. You know, so that's perfect place for Arts Award to sit.
Great.
I saw a question about, is Artsbox going to be replaced by Trinity as an online format? And the quick answer is no, because we're not as big as Facebook and Instagram, and we can't keep up with the technology changes. So what we're doing instead is working with helping people to use existing established online platforms.
Great. Now, there's a question about other resources available. So I think, you know, Ruth, you've mentioned, both Ruth and Jonathan have mentioned various resources. So I think what we will do as a result of the session today is kind of go away and make sure that we pull everything together so that you can all, you know, get the links that we've been talking about. Yeah, I think that seems like an important thing we need to do.
Yeah, if you look for Arts Award Advisor Hub, there's a searchable directory of resources. Brilliant.
Now, we're fast approaching 3 o'clock. Yes, that's a point from Lorena about that.
Good point from Lorena. Yes, yeah.
So, if those platforms are basically you're working with children who are too young to use those platforms, then it's, you know, coming back to those other methods that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, certainly Artsbox was accessible for young children. I have a colleague who is working on digital platforms for Arts Awards, so I will consult with her and again supply any information after the end of the webinar.
Great. So we've got a couple of minutes left. So if you were just to summarize, you know, what's your sort of takeaway, your top takeaway for everyone from today? So Jonathan, you go first.
I think from my point of view, I'm enormously encouraged and excited about the next few years, because I think inclusion is now, as I indicated before, a big topic area. And I think this aspect of it is very important, because people are looking at making a life in music, actually, really finding their roots and their pathway so they can sustain an interest, a career, whatever their engagement is with music. So I think we're only going to see things broadening out. I mean, you talk about Bristol, the Centre for Advanced Training is going to start being built at the Colston Hall, and, Arts Award, 13 years and going from strength to strength. I think it's an exciting time, and I very much hope people will continue to support Arts Award, and its work.
And how about you, Ruth?
Okay, well, I would say, don't do Arts Award. Let Arts Award accredit the work that you're already doing. So use Arts Award to accredit your work. If you jump in, do a little bit more research on the website, and hopefully attend a training, you will find out how it can work for you. It's not an extra thing that you have to do. It's a framework that you can use to accredit the work that you want to do.
Great. Now, I think I make it. Oh, we've got 2 minutes left, but I think let's call this a day. I'd like to just say a huge thank you to everyone who's been with us today for the last hour, and all your contributions and your participation, which has really helped make this, I hope, a very useful hour. And I'd also like to thank our lovely speakers. So Ruth, I know you've been battling a really heavy cold, and you've done a fantastic job to get through the hour. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks everyone for joining in. Hopefully I can follow up with some useful links.
Yeah, and Jonathan, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. It's just been wonderful to see people writing. That's the real, it's lovely to see all the chat and stuff. That's what it's all about for me. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, and as I said, we will pull all the resources together, and thank you for all those tips in the chat about accessing the resources. So let us wish you a warm rest of the day, and thank you very much for your time. And I'm going to end the meeting, so it will come to an abrupt end. So
bye.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone.